Good morning, hockey fans. Hope everyone had a beautiful Memorial Day weekend. The weather has been unbelievable here in South Florida. I'm here for the Rangers and Panthers series. Colby went down the shore, but now he's back home. I know you were busy over the weekend as well, Colby, doing Daily Faceoff Live yesterday. But this is Morning Cup of Hockey alongside Colby Cohen. I'm Jonny Lazarus, and we are presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet on Betway. Please play responsibly, and remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. We got a lot to get into today. We're going to talk about Game 3 last night between the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers. We have Frank Seravalli joining the show any moment here. We'll get into all the coaching moves that happened over the weekend and other news like the World Hockey Championships, things that came out of there, some announcements that will be happening today, and then we'll get into the Rangers and Florida Panthers and preview Game 4 tonight. So a lot to get into on Tuesday's episode here. But, Colby, what's going on with you? You in a good mood, bad mood? What's your vibe this morning?
I'm not in a bad mood because the weather's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It always kind of starts your day off nicely when you take your dogs out first thing in the morning and you're just like, wow, what a beautiful day. Not a cloud in the sky, no humidity, probably 65, 68 degrees here in Philadelphia. So, but it was a struggle of a weekend. I was dealing with a 1-year-old with an ear infection all weekend. A little visit to urgent care. So for any of our listeners out there that have kids, they know what that's all about. That can kill your weekend without a doubt. So, but I'm not in a bad mood at all. So I know you're in a good mood. We know why.
The chat's already buzzing, dude. The chat's already going.
I haven't gone into it yet. I'm actually opening YouTube right now. They're gonna have to wait a little bit because we're starting with last night. We have to start with last night, and when we get to Proraso later in the show to talk about tonight's Ranger Florida Panther game, Jonny, you're gonna get the floor. You're gonna be able to give your monologue.
I don't really need it.
Wow, know? So you're actually learning. That's what I'm. We'll start until Frank comes on.
Okay.
I was actually. People were tweeting me. And I was actually impressed with you because I said, Johnny's learning. And what I mean by that is that you're learning that after 5 games of him not doing anything, and then he has one big game, like you're kind of learning not to jump to conclusions, but you certainly had enough ammo.
I wouldn't call it that, to be honest. My frame of mind was that, like, so for everyone listening, you guys know how Colby and I are toward each other. Colby texted me as soon as Thursday's show ended and said, pretend I don't exist till Monday night. and then you were tweeting at me. You were trying to get me going. But like literally an hour after you sent that text, I think I said something about I sent something in our group chat. I don't remember what it was about, but
you broke it within an hour.
Yeah, I broke it within an hour. So then as the games were going on, I was like, you know what? I'll leave him alone. But then I don't know if you even saw on Laugh's second goal, I tweeted the clip of it and I made the caption on the tweet. Imagine saying Alexi Lafreniere is not an elite hockey player. Couldn't be me. So I didn't tag you in it, but I didn't
see it.
But I went at you. Yeah. So I didn't tag you in it, but I went at you. But yeah, we don't need to get into this right now. But yeah, we knew this was coming over the weekend for sure with the chat and everything. But let's go into last night because the Dallas Stars, Edmonton Oilers, you had a tweet about Dallas where they never look rattled. They never look.
And that's actually something that I wanted to talk to you about today because I got a couple of responses to that were from 100% from Ranger fans. Like I guess Ranger fans felt attacked by my tweet last night. And honestly, like that was not meant to throw shade at the Rangers. Before overtime started of the Ranger game, I texted Jonny and I said, I hope the Rangers can squeak this one out because it was all Florida in that third period. Like I wanted to see New York win that game because I want to see Florida back on their heels. We've yet to really see the Panthers really back on their heels in the playoffs where we've seen other teams back on their heels. So like I wanted to see how they would respond. So when I tweeted that last night, I truly meant it. I did not mean it as a slight to the Rangers, but I truly believe that after now watching the playoffs for however many weeks it's been, I guess we're in like week 6 of the playoffs or,
feels like that. Yeah.
Something like that. 5, 6. I feel like The Dallas Stars are never rattled, even when they have a shitty first period where they're down a couple, they're back on their heels. It kind of reminds me of the way they played in round one when they were down 0-2, or round two when they were down 0-1. And they just always look so composed, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, last night, I don't know, like, do you give more credit to Dallas, or do you say what the fuck happened to Edmonton in that second period? Because sure, Dallas was in control, but Edmonton looked like they had no business being out there. And I don't know how a team that good, that has that good of a start to the game, can come out that careless. It wasn't like they weren't putting forth any effort necessarily, but all the mistakes that Edmonton was making on these goals by Dallas, it just seemed like a lot of mental errors. And I don't know, Colby, if that's like human nature when you kind of go up 2-0 early on, and then, you're just programmed to let your foot off the gas. And here's some highlights from some of Jason Robertson's goals last night, courtesy of TNT. I mean, they just looked like they were sleeping a bit, right? Like, I don't know. It's so hard to explain what happened to Edmonton there in the second period. I don't want to take credit away from Dallas, but I feel like it was more Edmonton sleeping.
I think in most of those situations, you can point probably to a little bit of both in those situations. And I think that, with Dallas, they're a team, and it's funny. Like, I was texting with some of the Edmonton Oilers Nation guys when the game was going on, and the way Dallas consistently reloads above the puck, it puts a lot of pressure on you defensively. And I did, you mentioned that I did DFO live yesterday, and Frank actually asked me the question, like, who do you feel like is in control of the series? Like, do you feel like some people think Edmonton is kind of in control of the series at 1-1? And I kind of gave him the reasons why I didn't think that was true. And one of them was that in the game that they won in Dallas, I thought when I rewatched that game and I rewatched a little bit closer, I felt like Stuart Skinner bailed them out.
Yeah, he did.
I felt like in their defense, but Johnny, even in the first period, the shots were like 12-4. Okay. And of the 4 or 5 shots in the first period, and we're going back 2 games in that Edmonton Dallas series, Skinner, like, all 4 shots were golden grade A opportunities. And I said to Frank, as we'll welcome him into the show here, Vic, whenever you want, you can patch him in. I said to Frank, I said, look, hey, Frank, how you doing this morning? I'm just telling a story really quick from our show yesterday. I said to him, look, I feel like the Edmonton Oilers D has been leaky. Their D zone coverage has been a little leaky. And I thought that would catch up with them because I trust Ottinger more than I trust Skinner. And, I texted Frank this last night, and he was busy at the game, but I said the leaky defensive zone coverage cost them in this hockey game, Frank. And you were live in the press box, and I don't know if you saw that or felt that, but I felt like we started to see that in game 2, and it carried into game 3.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. I would say that when you have the puck on your stick 3 different times in the zone and you can't get it out, and it ends up in the back of your net, that's on you. And there's a lot of things to unpack from an Oilers perspective. I mean, you knew you were getting the pushback in the second period from the Dallas Stars, and somehow you weren't ready for it. That's part of it too. And so, look, there's a lot of facets to this. There's a lot of what ifs. What if Stuart Skinner stopped that 4th one? What if Chris Knoblauch called a timeout in the second period to stop the bleeding? What if Chris Knoblauch didn't reunite Cody Ceci and Darnell Nurse? There's all these different things that have gone into it, but the bottom line, I think you're right, is that the Oilers' defensive zone play, and I don't really think this is as much on the forwards, although it's always a 5-man unit. It's sloppy, and it really comes down to one pair that really takes the brunt of their issues, and that's whoever Darnell Nurse is playing with. At $9.25 million a year, you have to be able to carry a pair, and he's got the worst plus minus in the playoffs. It's not close. they're not getting nearly enough from him. And as you look as they try and move around their pairs and try and find a fit, that's what stands out the most, is that they're doing it to try and cover up his mistakes.
Yeah, you can't insulate a 9.5. Like, it should never be that way where you feel like you have to protect him. And it's not just without the puck. I mean, the way that he's allowing forecheckers to get on inside on him consistently, it to me, that speaks to a little bit of a motor issue.
Is it a motor issue or is it a confidence issue?
I mean, look,
I've never questioned his motor, to be honest.
But some of it, sure, with the puck, yeah, like that could be confidence. But Frank, when you're going back on a battle and you're allowing forwards to constantly get inside body positioning on you, that is not confidence to me. That's either you're tired or your motor isn't going at a high enough level versus what you're getting. And look, again, Dallas is like Florida and really New York too, but more like Florida.
More like Florida.
Consistently reload, repressure, reload, repressure. And Nurse is having a hard time with that. I mean, simplify your game. Use the walls if you have to, Johnny.
Can I rewind for 1 second, though? Because I found it interesting what you were saying before when Frank joined, just about who's in control of the series. I think about all 3 games right now, and Game 1, I thought Dallas was the better team. Edmonton sneaks away with one. Game 2, I thought Edmonton was better in that game, and Dallas wins that game. And then last night, you take away the second period, I thought Edmonton was the better team.
You can't take away the second period, though. That's the problem.
Of course.
And I would say on the whole, though,
one period shouldn't win you a hockey game.
Well, if you have a 2-goal lead in your building and you played like gangbusters in the first period, that's a missed opportunity. So now let's fast forward a second.
Yeah.
The Oilers blow their 2-goal lead and are trailing 3-2 in the second, and they somehow get a goal before the end of the second period. So they head into the final frame dead even and have the ability and chance to atone for their sins, and they don't. That game, you can't give games away in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You definitely can't give games away in the conference final. And, to do it repeatedly once a series, that's a really tough spot to be in. You create all sorts of additional pressure for yourselves. Like, I'd have to think that there's some part of, if not the players themselves, the fan base that's sitting here going, holy smokes, after the first period, we have a chance to maybe be up 3-1 in this series on Wednesday night. You don't think that was part of their thought process or calculus at some point?
Mm-hmm. Well, and now you've got a lot of people. Now
you're in the deep end of the pool.
Now you look at social media and the narrative is the way they lost that game, they're done. Because Dallas is like that machine that when they get rolling downhill, like they did to Colorado, nobody can seem to stop them. And what a difference Frank Ropa Hintz makes in that hockey game. I mean, have you heard, we heard upper body injury. Did you hear anything further on that? Because he looked like he did not miss a beat. He looked fresh and he looked sharp after he missed that one opportunity in the first where the puck hopped over his stick with a good little play. Tyler Seguin made a play from below the goal line to him, and it jumped his stick, and he looked down at his stick like, is there a hole in my stick? After that, he's probably the best player on the ice for his team.
He was awesome. So to answer your question about the injury, I think it was a wrist or a hand injury. He took a cross check or a slash right above the hands, and he had been out since that point. So look, for someone that misses that period of time, lucky for him, he said he was able to keep skating, and that makes a huge difference. But the speed that he brings, the comfort and familiarity that he has with Jason Robertson, it felt like he kind of unlocked Robertson again, and Robertson had, kind of been in his own scoring funk. And Pete DeBoer brought this up after the game. He's like, Rupe Hintz may not be Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, but he is our team's he mentioned Zibanejad or
Yeah.
pick another player. And it's like, if you take that guy out of our lineup, well, all of a sudden there's a trickle down effect, not just in the lines. And you saw with, hey, game 3, you're asking Matt Duchene to take a bit of a lesser role now. You kind of slide everyone back down into more natural spots. And the fact that they were able to dispatch the Colorado Avalanche and then now draw even on home ice to start this series without their number one center, I mean, it kind of speaks to not just the depth, but the way that everyone else on their team adjusted. Like, that's not an easy hole to fill.
Yeah, and Rupe Hintz too is like, people forget. I know he didn't score last night, but he's a solidified 30 goal scorer.
Rupa.
I said Rupe. What?
Said Rupa, which is great.
Did you guys say it differently?
I'm confused on exactly what the proper pronunciation is.
Yeah, just
Rupe,
funny.
Rupa,
Rope. I mean, you hear different ones, but I've just never heard Rupa. That was it. I
thought I said Rupe. We'll have to check the tape on that one.
Listen, it's all good.
Yeah,
Keep
whatever.
going.
Move on. But Hintz, we'll call him, is a
that's the safe. Like, if I were asking a question in the press conference last night, it would have been Hintz. Like, okay. I don't need to refer to him by a first name.
All right, I'll go Hintz. But this is a solidified goal scorer, and even we talk about
he got Selke love from me.
Yeah.
Like, this is a complete player.
Butchie puts him number 1 on his Selke ballot 2 years in a row. He said.
Can I make my fucking point?
No.
The point of him just being out there is another scoring threat, which could leave Robertson open. That's people forget about the presence of guys being on the ice and what it does to those around them. Like, that's such a minor thing that's so real. And why are you laughing at me, man?
I'm laughing at the chat. Somebody said RuPaul.
Let's lock it in here, guys. Let's lock it in. But you know what I'm saying? Like, Robertson, you want to call it a direct correlation or not? Like, whether Hintz, had so much to do on those goals, which he did, right? Like, he made some pretty decent plays to set up Robertson, but like, just him being on the ice, if you're an Edmonton Oilers defenseman or you're someone defending him, you have to be aware when that guy's out there. So it just opens up everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not just the presence when you assist on a couple goals.
Yeah.
And have, your line mate on his way to a hat trick. That's
yes,
is way more than presence.
You create a lot of space for other guys, just with how fast he moves. And he's one of the forwards in the NHL that puts defensemen back on their heels at all times, even defensemen who are good skaters. He makes you a little bit uncomfortable. You got to think a little bit twice about taking a little extra ice. He's just one of those guys that can accelerate at such a high level, and it really can change things. The last question I have for you on that game last night, Frank, because there are other things going on in the NHL that I think we both want to pick your brain about, is look, I've done games in Edmonton before, but never a playoff game. And, TNT does a nice job of showing more of the pregame festivity in the building than ESPN, because ESPN's usually taking it from another sport. Sometimes it gets late, whatever, where TNT does a whole pregame show lead in. So you just get to see more. And when the fans in Edmonton take the anthem, the back half of the anthem with the singer, and I'm sitting at home, and honestly, it just like gives you the chills. I mean, I think everybody knows I'm vocal about this. I love anthems in sports. I really do. I think it players love it. The chills you get, even if it's not your own anthem. The Canadian national anthem gives me chills as well. But how unbelievable is that atmosphere, Frank? Like, because you get to be there and you're high up. I mean, that press box is on Mars, but you still, it's so much better than anything else in the playoffs right now, right? As far as atmosphere goes.
It is. I mean, look, it's next level. Like, this is, I say it all the time, Oiler games, regular season or playoffs, are an event. And being here and understanding what that means. So, okay, Frank, what does that mean? The Oilers are the Green Bay Packers of hockey. There's people that drive here to games from 12 hours away and don't stay in a hotel and drive the 12 hours back.
Jeez.
Like, on the routine, on the regular. This is a whole half of a province. That's their team. And outside the arena, there's 2 different viewing areas. Inside the arena, it's electric. Everywhere you go, someone's wearing a jersey, and it's all Oilers all the time. So, I always say this, if you want to see an unbelievable environment, pick a good Canadian market and go there for a playoff game. If that's your thing that you want to experience, because whether it's the anthem, whether it's the intros, whether it's a goal, whatever it might be, like, people here are wild about their team. And that's why I want to come here to cover games and see this team, because it really matters.
Well, I know you haven't had a chance probably to step outside yet, but what's the city going to be like today after a loss like that last night? I feel like that it's just.
I think there's a lot of people feeling exactly what you're talking about, is that this team in this spot is really in a tough one, because that one hurt. You had an opportunity to take a 2-1 series lead. It was right there for you. And not to say that the Stars were going to roll over, but if you could find some way to kill the momentum, if you could find some way to just halt that progress. You mentioned a team going downhill. In the second period, you're talking about one shift that might turn the tide. And for 12 minutes, they were basically hemmed in their own end and had no chance, no choice. And it was completely against their will. And so when that happens, when you're going to get punched in the face and you're still not ready for it, it's odd, because we always talk about with this team lessons learned, and will they display, or will they show that they've learned their lesson? And even after the game, they were talking about, hey, lesson learned. And it's like, well, you can only say that when you actually prove that you've learned it. And when you get to this spot now in the conference final, Connor McDavid said after the game, he goes, look, series are short. This was a missed opportunity. And I think that's what everyone in Edmonton is feeling today, that they could have been in a much better position. And this makes it really long.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Well, it's nonetheless, it's a series that I think a lot of people thought might end in 5 games, 6 games. I think a lot of people felt like Dallas was far superior. I think Edmonton has had their moments, and I think a lot of it is going to continue to depend on, just how do they defend Dallas from the top of the circles down? Are they breaking the puck out clean? And what's the goalie matchup going to look like? So,
well, that was one thing too, quickly, like the game within the game, because the Oilers were on their heels in the second period, then all of a sudden Dallas was able to stretch the ice again. When Edmonton had some kind of sustained pressure, it's really hard for Dallas to do that, because they don't have the puck. But when the Oilers are back on their heels and you can stretch the ice and play the long game, it just played right in further to what Dallas is really good at.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move around the league a little here, because there was a bunch of news over the weekend, Frank. You broke the Bialsma thing to Seattle. I wonder what that means for Jay Leach, who's now seemingly a guy who's getting a decent amount of head coaching interviews when he's on staffs, but he's never landing the plane. It happened to him in Boston. It happened to him with Seattle the first time. Then he ends up an assistant coach. Arneal goes to Winnipeg. Any of these coaching decisions surprising to you, Frank, based on like what you had been hearing as far as who was going to land where?
No, I would say Scott Arneal, very predictable. I know the Jets interviewed 2 other people, but I don't even know if they were in person. So I think that was kind of cooked from the beginning. Same thing with Dan Bialsma. It was the only name I ever heard in Seattle was Dan Bialsma, and he's done a nice job coaching their AHL team in Coachella Valley. They're playing in the Western Conference Final on Wednesday night. They're introducing Dan Bialsma today. Craig Berube was one of the first names we heard in Toronto. Like it's almost gone, oddly enough, I don't want to say by script, but maybe the only real surprise in the hiring cycle so far is Sheldon Keefe bouncing back so quickly and going to New Jersey. Other than that, but like even his regular season record, you knew that if he wanted to coach that he would get an opportunity.
Yep.
So I wouldn't say anything's been too surprising, but the way it's worked out to this point, I mean, the fact that we're down now to just San Jose, also not really surprising. This is a difficult job. It's one that I think a lot of people, you want to get a seat at the table with only 32 jobs, but you also know that this might be your only crack at it once you get it, because your record is probably going to be awful.
Mm-hmm. Are you hearing anything about San Jose? My God, I almost just said Seattle you 3 times. I just read a report yesterday that Ryan
Warsofsky stroking out on us or what?
Yeah, seriously. Ryan Warsofsky got a second interview there. And I think one other guy maybe got a second interview. One of the beat writers in San Jose that's generally been someone who's been reliable with their information for a while. But have you heard anything about that job?
No, I don't think they're quite at the finish line yet. I think they're still working through their process, and I think Mike Grier is pretty methodical. I think he knows that he needs to get this one right, because David Quinn was his guy, and the Boston connection, the BU connection, all those things, to see that only last 2 seasons, I think was pretty surprising. I mean, the results obviously weren't there. I don't know what the expectation was coming in. And we know that regardless of where you're at in your rebuild cycle, most managers only get 2 to 2.5 coaches that they can hire and or fire before all of a sudden it turns to you. And so I think there's some real pressure on Mike Grier to find a positive outlook for this team and where they're heading. Macklin Celebrini and now very likely Will Smith will change that dynamic quite a bit. And you need someone that can really shield and protect these players. Like, yes, they're going to be hugely important pieces of the franchise for the next 15 years, but you need a positive environment. You need someone who can deploy these guys correctly, someone who can take the pressure off of them. And it seems like everyone that's interviewed does not have head coaching experience. I don't know that that necessarily is the right choice.
I agree.
I know that we're all about new opportunities. Hey, I've seen fans clamoring on social media, stop with the retreads.
Mm-hmm.
I'd argue that some of these guys are not retreads that have been hired. But at the same time, in this case, I would want someone who has experience dealing with top end, number 1 overall pick talent, instead of a guy that's trying to feel his way through the process at the same time.
Right. And it was Shang Peng before you asked him about the next guy, just so you know. And he did report over the weekend as well that Smith is a done deal. I mean, I think Frank has been saying that for a while now. And I think we've kind of all confirmed that that's happening. So that was who it was. Someone in the chat, Lucas just dropped that in the chat. I couldn't remember exactly.
Jeff Blashill is another guy that has gotten some love from the Sharks in terms of the interview process. And that would make a lot more sense to me. Someone who has been an NHL head coach and for a while in Detroit, then has now gone to Tampa, has gotten a different view, has seen John Cooper work up close and personal, and then now could potentially get a second crack. Like that to me would make more sense than a first-time guy, but I'm not saying it can't work. It's just, I think it's more challenging.
Frank, another organization that Colby and I have been pretty hard on this show, the Columbus Blue Jackets. You know, we've actually like ripped them to shreds pretty much. You know, during
deservedly so.
Yeah, during our few months here, but and I know it's unofficial still, right? Don Waddell, the rumors of him going to be
it's
unofficially
officially unofficial, if that makes sense.
So what do you make of that? And do you think they're acting a little too fast? You know, Waddell resigned on Friday?
Nope.
From Carolina, and now all of a sudden he's up in Columbus, and we talk about Columbus being a city that I think deserves more respect as a city of sports fandom, but doesn't necessarily get it from their hockey team, and rightfully so with the product they've had the last couple of years. But what do you think as far as Waddell going there, and if the fit will bring more respect to the Columbus Blue Jackets?
Well, in terms of timing, no, they're not moving fast. In fact, they've moved insanely slow. This is a team that fired their manager in, I believe it was early February.
Mm-hmm.
So this search process has been ongoing for months. We've heard, at least as far as I can remember, pretty much 0 names. One or two.
We actually have a lot of Columbus fans in our chat too, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Look, this has been slow moving in my opinion. Like, we are now 4 weeks away from the draft. We are less than 5 weeks away from free agency. Like, the time is now. And in terms of Don Waddell leaving, it was really more about the Hurricanes season wrapping up. I think they had gotten to the point between Don Waddell and owner Tom Dundon where there was some mutual frustration. It was like, hey, there's some parts about your job that I don't like, and I think vice versa. And I think they just agreed to shake hands and say, hey, let's go our separate ways. Yeah, it's time.
What
and
is it? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that happens over the course of a long period of time. And Don Waddell has been asked to do a lot. He's the president of the arena. He's the president of their business ops. And he's also the GM of the team. Put in probably some really difficult situations with the way Tom Dundon likes to run his team. So that said, I think with his contract expiring, he had kind of been poking around the last number of weeks, saying, even while the Hurricanes were in the playoffs, just like, hey, this might be something that's happening. And then as soon as they were knocked out, the Blue Jackets jumped on it. So the resignation comes after Don Waddell kind of locks up the next position. And as soon as we saw the actual formal resignation, there was a pretty good sense that this is well down the track. Mm-hmm. That said, I'm fascinated to see what he does with this Blue Jackets team. I think they're in a prime position to take off. I think they've got one of the best young prospect cores in the league. Just watch Denton Mateychuk in this Memorial Cup, and you see the path with David Jiricek and Kent Johnson and all these other guys that they
Tilly.
Yeah, like
Friendly.
Yeah, they're going to get someone, and they're going to get someone good this year.
they're going to be in a great spot. So the key questions for Don Waddell are: 1, what are you doing with your coach? My opinion only, Pascal Vincent. It's time. Even one season, there needs to be a change.
It's time.
If you are 16 games into your NHL head coaching career, and you're coming out and saying to the media that this is, quote, getting really old, you're missing the point. And the deployment of young players this season, long after this team's season was over in November. You get to January and February and you are not playing your top young players. Like, someone please help that make sense.
Yeah. Well, and there's enough good coaches out there, Frank, that I think Don Waddell is going to say, look, I've got McClellan, I've got Woodcroft. I mean, there's just a lot of good options out there. If you want to go younger, there's Jay Leach, whatever, but there's options, good options.
So the other questions are, what is Don Waddell's title? Is he going to be president of hockey ops and GM, or is he just the president? What does that mean for John Davidson? Is he fulfilling this search and then moving on?
Yeah. It seems like that might be the case, right?
Well, maybe. I mean, I would think that that's part of it. And I think there's also been some health issues with John Davidson. He spent a large chunk of this past season away from the team in Florida after a pretty significant back surgery. I just think there's a lot of layers to where Columbus is going, and who else will Don Waddell use to fill out his front office? He's got an interesting support staff. Josh Flynn does a great job there. Rick Nash is someone that a lot of people view as an up-and-coming GM candidate at some point. Will Don Waddell use the next few years to mentor Rick Nash to then be the next guy? But what I'm most fascinated to see is Don Waddell take all of the things that he's learned and assembled in Carolina, and then to take that to Columbus, where he doesn't have to do any of those other responsibilities. You don't have to be president of the arena. Mike Priest is your president of business ops in Columbus and president of the team, who's actually helping lead the search. And that's how those two guys, as Don Waddell was president of the team in Carolina before he was GM, while Ron Francis was still there, that's how him and Mike Priest got to know each other. So there's, he's a sharp guy who's full of energy, that has had one of the most consistent teams in the league. Now, is that because of him? Is that because of Eric Tolsky and the work that his staff has done? Is it all those things? He's stepping into a great situation in Columbus, I think, with one of the most hands-off, well sort of funded owners that's put this team, like, it's we just said it's time for Columbus to actually be on the map in the NHL.
And D. Ely in our chat, who's a big Canes fan, I believe, just asked too if Waddell brings Marty Necas with him.
He might. By the way, the Don Waddell press conference, say hi to Marty's dad for me. Like, that was good. That's one of the clips of the year. Yeah. And that is classic Don Waddell.
Well, and Rod was really funny about it. He said, there's only 5 happy parents on every team. The 5 guys on the first power play unit. It's really funny because I've seen this. Hockey parents are crazy. My dad.
They're the same at the NHL level as they are at the squirt level. Like,
everyone's
it's not really all that different. And in fact,
it gets worse at the top sometimes. The better the kid is, the crazier the dad is.
And they're always around, especially come playoff time. Like, I see these parents all
at every building.
Yeah, they don't every game in every city. And it's awesome, but it's also kind of like a little scary.
All right, Frank, leave us with this. Because we talked a lot about Columbus. What happens now in Carolina? Because the rumor is that Eric Tolsky takes over. Maybe Justin Williams assumes some sort of higher end position. We didn't even mention Chris Clark in Columbus, by the way, who's their assistant GM, former teammate of mine. I haven't reached out to him because it's probably not the best time for him right now, just with uncertainty. But similarly in Carolina, you've got this Eric Tolsky guy who, let's be honest, was like a fan blogger not that long ago. And then he started with the statistics and then, the advanced statistics. And then he became very well respected. And then he becomes, advisor, assistant GM. Now people are talking about him as a general manager. What are you hearing about that? Is he going to assume that role? Are they actually looking? Because they called him the interim when they made the announcement.
So it's dangerous to assume that he actually will be the guy. And I've seen a lot of reporting. Oh, the expectation is, well, people said that and reported it before finding out facts. And look, is there a likelihood or a strong possibility that it is Eric Tolsky? Yes. But that's just people reading the tea leaves and trying to take one step too far. I'm told the Hurricanes are going to conduct a full external search. I'm told Tom Dundon has been asking around to agents, teams, other executives around the league. Hey, I'm looking for someone who can do this GM job. Give me a list. And so I think that's caught some people by surprise who thought that Tolsky was just the obvious heir apparent and choice. And personally, he is to me, because with all due respect to the work that, Don Waddell has been the face of it because he's had the title. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the work of the engine of that team was on the back of Eric Tolsky, Aaron Schwartz, Darren York, that whole group there that has done some really nice work. Like, the Canes are second in the league in wins over the last 6 seasons. They're 5th in playoff wins despite having not won a single conference final game. It goes to show you the success that they've had, although not getting to the ultimate prize. Their process, I think, is as good or better than any team in the league. And I would say, in terms of resources, relative resources, they're far and away the best, most efficiently run team in the league. Will he be the GM? I think the answer lies in the question, which is, does Tom Dundon feel that Eric Tolsky is the acceptable face of this team? Meaning, he's an intimidatingly smart guy. His name's on 26 patents. He has a PhD. I've known him since he was a blogger covering the Flyers. And he's someone that, he's so smart. He's outside of the sort of realm of like what typical hockey people are. And I use these air quotes because it's important. I think part of the notion is absolute bullshit. Eric Tolsky has worked in an NHL front office for 10 years now. Mm-hmm. How much more hockey guy do you want? He left his job in nanotechnology to work in hockey. So he's done it. He's lived it. I think he's a fine communicator and would do a great job. The question is, does Tom Dundon think that he can communicate with GMs and make deals? Does Tom Dundon think he can be the guy that's effectively messaging what the Carolina Hurricanes are looking for from a public perspective? Those are all real questions that Tom Dundon is asking himself right now. And I think on the flip side to that, the fear or concern is you better make sure you get it right, because my guess would be that if Eric Tolsky doesn't get the job, that Eric Tolsky is going to be working somewhere else. What would be his incentive to stay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I think that's all makes a lot of sense. And I'll just note that, Kyle Davidson, the general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks, did not have a PhD in was not doing nanotechnology. He started as an intern in the American League for them, doing some video stuff, and rose to general manager in a very, very different situation. But
sports are changing. Like, look at the NFL. Like, it's calculator guys that are running teams. And I'm not saying that to be demeaning. I'm just saying, like, the NFL has gotten away from former players that, smashed heads for 15 years.
Yeah, there's 50-50 on that.
It's but
changing now. The guard is changing, no doubt.
Well, because by and large, most NHL GMs don't have college degrees. And they played and they had successful long careers, and they're really smart hockey guys, and all that stuff makes sense. But I think teams are understanding the opportunity cost of, finding someone that has those extra credentials.
Well, I think it's why every GM's best and closest confidant is their cap guy. I mean, Joe Sakic. You look around at some of these really well-respected figures that are general managers, and they all probably understand the CBA, but they all have a guy who knows it like it's their Bible and reads it every night and can breathe it. So we'll see what happens there. Look, it has not been a shortage of news around these playoffs other than the games and what has gone on. So there's still a number of openings. There's still a number of dominoes to fall. Like you said, if someone else gets hired, then Eric Tolsky becomes available. Maybe he ends up in Columbus. Like, who knows, right? And what happens to the Columbus guys? Their American League team with Vogelhuber and Mike Havlin. Those guys did a great job this year. But again, what happens now? Because we know all these hirings have a domino effect of other people moving around. So, Jonny, I don't know if you want to ask Frank anything else. I figure we kept him here for 45 minutes. We should let him roll. But
I'm all set.
We appreciate your time here. We know you're going to stick around in Edmonton here for Game 4. Enjoy. I know you probably have 150 shows to do today in Edmonton. Say hi to our guy Bob Stauffer for us, and we'll see you next week, Frank.
Sounds good. See you guys. Have a good week.
Thanks, Frank. You too.
Yeah,
it was good stuff. I mean, you said it, Colby. There's a lot of news happening. It's kind of hard to stay in the mix with everything going on too, with playoffs and the draft coming up and trades.
Well, and I think, look, we're gonna probably have a couple of days between. We know we'll have days between games here once the conference finals wrap up. So, there's still things we want to talk about, and the draft and some of the trades happening right now and some of the free agents. But I think what we'll do is we'll stack those days between rounds for a lot of that stuff. And we'll kind of do our best to continue to stick to, the games and what's kind of hanging around the games. So let's get into Proraso, Jonny, and talk a little Rangers Panthers, because this series is kind of going differently than I think a lot of people thought, other than maybe you and the rest of your Rangers faithful.
Yeah. Well, so this is our playoff preview, was presented by Proraso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care made in Italy since 1948. Proraso has been a staple of Italian culture in barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Proraso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15. That's in all caps, Hockey15. And we actually had a listener of our show send us or tweet us a picture of Proraso when they were in Italy, which was awesome. I sent that
was like a sign at a barber shop in Italy, right?
Yeah, it was awesome. I sent that to some of the people who worked there, and they appreciated it. So that was really cool that our listeners recognize Proraso when they're seeing it. The beard, like we said, it's coming in pretty good here. So, I have my Proraso oil with me, and it's helped me continue to make the beard look a little bit clean, even though it's getting a little bit wild here. But let's talk about Rangers Panthers game 3. It was pretty lopsided. That third period was insane. It looked like kind of the first and second last night with Dallas and Edmonton a little bit. The Rangers in the second period were amazing, and the third period they were not. But Florida, this was the message I kind of had after that game, Colby. Florida had a chance to put the Rangers away in the last 10 minutes of that third period, and they didn't find a way to score that go-ahead goal.
How good was Igor? I think look, I don't think they could have done anything else. I think Igor Shesterkin went, like Hank said, he made a decision, and you can see and feel that with Igor. He might have let up 4 in that game, but he made a decision after that last goal, and there was nothing else getting by him. You could have, nothing. You could have shot a fucking bead, and he was going to stop it. That's how dialed he was.
The shot attempts were 41-10 in the third period and 108-44 in the game. Pretty insane. And I know, listen, I know it's probably a tired topic because, I obviously didn't watch the broadcast, but I heard that the broadcast was, nonstop talking about the shot disparity. And at the end of the day, all that matters is the final score. But when you see a shot disparity of that magnitude, it is pretty wild to look at it. And Igor lets in 4 goals, and we're sitting here talking about a great goaltending performance, right? So there are so many little things in that game that could have changed, could have been different, but we're still talking about a Rangers 2-1 series lead at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, why don't you take an opportunity to gloat a little bit about your best buddy and what kind of game he had the other night?
Yeah, I mean, you look at just eye test too. Like Lafreniere was going the whole night, right? And Artemi Panarin's been relatively quiet. And I actually relatively might not even be putting it in the right way. He's been quiet. So the Rangers have needed a guy to step up, and Lafreniere is a guy who I said, he stepped up in the last round. He scored the 4 goals in 3 games against Carolina when the Rangers needed a way to find goal scoring. And listen, right now too, their power play is not going. It's 0 for 8. Like they need goal scoring from other people. And not only are they getting it from Lafreniere, but they're getting it from Barclay Goodrow as well. But to stay in theme,
are Rangers fans ready to stop shitting on Barclay Goodrow, who's just been a playoff? I mean, they kill him during the regular season. They absolutely kill him. Here's Loft's first goal, which was very smooth. I mean, look, there's no arguing that the kid has skill. No, you're never gonna get that argument, and it's just so funny to me. Like your Twitter army just can't wait. No, I didn't see this goal live. Okay?
Oh, you didn't?
I stepped out of the house during the second period because we had a barbecue going on at our house, and I did, so I was kind of coming in and out. But my phone blew up. People texting me being like, Jonny is going to be insufferable on the show. Look, it's a highlight reel goal. I mean, there's no doubt about it. To have the courage to pull this toe drag off around Kulikov, completely freezes him with his eyes. And then, to have that presence to get, listen, there's
then he kicks Bob right in the chest.
A high degree of skill that happens in this play. But my only question for you is, and I texted you this, and you can tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong here, but he is a very streaky guy, because you look at him, even during the regular season, I would be texting you 9 games, he'd have like 1 point. And then he'd go and have 5 games where he has 12 points, right? And like he's done it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He scored us a couple goals, and then he goes quiet for a week. Go ahead.
Take your Colby shitting on Jonny hat off just for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to not be a streaky player when you don't get any first power play time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. Like, call it what you want. There's no one you can really take off of that first unit, and we've had this argument a ton. But how can you argue that, you know, a guy with this much skill shouldn't be on it, right? Like, in what world is a player of Lafreniere's caliber not on a first power play unit? You know, first overall.
Where would he? So the question would be he's not like. Yeah, he's obviously got the talent, but you're not going to put him in a one-timer spot where Mika is.
Mm-hmm.
He's not better than Kreider as a net front player.
No.
He's not better than Vinny in the
or
bump.
Panarin, yeah.
Right? And you're not going to take Panarin or Fox off.
No, so that's what I'm saying.
Dude, one of your Ranger fans tweeted me that Loff is a top 10 player in the NHL. And then one of our listeners hit under it and was like, Jonny says yes, Colby says no. I think it was David Roth, okay, who gets up early on the West Coast. And he chirps me all the time for the Loft stuff. But like, you can't actually, I mean, I was going to respond and be like, Jonny doesn't truly believe he's a top 10 player in the NHL. Like, even Jonny knows that that's not.
No, but I do truly believe he will be a 100-point player.
I know you believe that. I understand. I very well do understand. And so, look, we talked about this before the series, and we said, look, he's going to have to create a little bit of space and take a little bit of pressure off Panarin. Otherwise, it's going to be a difficult series with how heavy Florida plays, right? So the question is can he find some more consistency with his scoring? Because look, we tend in hockey to say, oh, a guy scored 2 goals, he had a great game. You know, there's a life where you can score a goal in a game and not play well, right? Like there is that, you know, that bit of life you want to see him continue to find some consistency in his scoring and not have 2 or 3 goals in 2 games and then not score for 5 games. Although, look, he stepped up in a big way. One other thing that I want a player that I want to give some love to.
Well, before that, can I make one more point about Laf?
Yeah, of course.
On his first goal, the Rangers in the first 10 minutes of that game, they had probably like 5 to 10 turnovers in the neutral zone. They could not get through. And Florida scores that first goal on the power play. Reinhart gets one, you know, a cheeky one in the backhand that beats Shesterkin like right through his arm. But the Rangers looked like a disaster getting through the neutral zone. And Trouba makes a great breakout pass to Vinny. Trocheck then finds a streaking Lafreniere. Like, the fact that Lafreniere got on his horse and got through the middle of the ice like that cleanly was so big just for the Rangers to open up the middle of the ice, because, you know, Schneider has a terrible turnover that leads to the penalty that becomes the Reinhart goal. Like, they were a mess in the middle of the ice. So I think that goal just kind of settled them into it a little bit. You know, I just want to make that point of how critical at that moment it was.
Yeah. So, Vic, do we have the game-winning goal teed up? I know I didn't ask you. Excuse me. I know I didn't ask you to do that. But I want to talk about the game-winning goal a little bit. And you know, Jonny, you had a tweet that you thought Wheeler would come into the lineup with the VZ injury, which I didn't necessarily think would happen. But I want you to watch. Just keep it paused for a second here, Vic. I want you to keep an eye on Kaapo Kakko on the game-winning goal, and he's lined up on the inside hash mark.
Well, I thought Kakko would come in too. I thought Roslovic was going to come out.
And here's the thing. I don't know what Jack Roslovic is doing here. I really don't. I thought Wenberg and Kakko played well, and their minutes reflected it in this game. I thought Roslovic was a passenger again, just my opinion. But I want you to roll this clip a little bit, but I want everybody to keep an eye on Kakko. Watch what he does here on this faceoff, okay? He gets inside, okay? First, it was Bennett. He stays on the battle underneath And then watch how he gets his stick in on Kulikov to help jar that puck loose. And then Roslovic, who's being very perimeter, he doesn't go in, right? Faceoffs are not just a centerman's role, okay? Wingers, as Jonny will tell you, their job is to get in on faceoffs. And that was a nice replay there by ESPN. But I think Kakko deserves a lot of credit on that goal. He gets inside of Bennett. He then comes back around on the pile. He doesn't go to the corner. He doesn't stand around and wait. He gets his stick in on Kulikov. So he influences 2 battles on that play, which jars the puck loose. And then Roslovic, punches it back. I don't remember who took the original shot. Lindgren. And then the goal happens. So, Kakko doesn't get the assist on the goal, but that play does not happen if Kakko does not stay in on the battle. And he played 14 minutes or so in that game. And I thought it was one of the more engaged physically, games that he's played in a while. Like, he was in on the battle. Okay, he wasn't taking shortcuts. He wasn't waiting for other guys to chip him pucks and do things. So, look, I like the way that he responded in that game. And I thought he brought something to that third line in which he hasn't done as of late. But I still think Roslovic has just been a complete passenger. And to be honest, I think I'd throw Wheeler in on that third line and give him a look at some point here over Jack Roslovic because he's just so soft on the puck.
I thought that. So I tweeted the line, and it was just like my guess of what Laviolette would do, because I know Laviolette has a ton of respect for a guy like Blake Wheeler and how hard he's worked to come back. And I'm starting to think now at some point we might see him. But I thought it was going to be Kakko and Wheeler in, Roslovic out. That's the lineup I thought he'd go with. And listen, while Philip Hedl, happy to see him back in the lineup, we haven't seen a ton. I know it's only been like 3 games or so, but haven't seen a ton with him, Zibanejad, and Kreider creating, right? Like there's been a couple looks here and there, nothing crazy enough to keep that line intact. And Wheeler, say what you want about his skating, but like the most success this year that Kreider and Zibanejad really had was kind of with Blake Wheeler.
Yeah, but I think you got to give Hedl. You got to give him a little. You got to give him a little bit of runway because you.
But how much time do you have in the playoffs?
Well, but you know what? You see the flashes. You see the plays where he's able to find a little bit of space. You see the plays where he's able to create. He's not. Listen, you watch Hedl. He's not a liability defensively. I mean, his
speed too.
His hockey IQ in the defensive zone is. I mean, you watch him. His stick is always in a good spot. He plays through guys. Early in his career, he was fly-by city, never in on the battle, never playing through guys, stick always up. He's got really good habits, Hedl, and I think that's one of the reasons they've been able to insert him back into the lineup after missing, 7 months of hockey, most of the 82-game season, because his habits are so good. So, I don't think that pulling Hedl off that line just yet is the play. So we've got a guy in the chat right now who is one of these Roslovic lovers, says that I'm a clown and Roslovic is the reason Lindgren had a pass to work with. Listen, man, if you think that I don't know what I'm talking about and you think that Jack Roslovic created that play, well, then you're unhelpable, because Jack Roslovic got lucky that Kakko continued to battle through and got his, himself involved first by running through Bennett and making it difficult on Bennett, coming around the backside and pushing Kulikov's stick to wedge that puck free. Where, like I said, every winger will tell you in hockey that your job is to get in on the battle and help your centerman, not just stand there with your stick up like Roslovic did. So tell me you have no idea about hockey without telling me you have no idea about hockey. I appreciate that you're exposing yourself, Dylan, to having absolutely no idea what you're watching. We do appreciate when people do that on our show. So we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be, I think there's decisions to be made. Look, let's talk about Matt Rempe really quickly, because I thought that he was so effective in the game at Madison Square Garden. I thought he was so effective. He played 10 plus minutes that game.
10 minutes that game, only 4 minutes in game 3.
And then you go on the road and you just he becomes like a non-factor. He really does.
I disagree.
I know you posted that video and you made it seem like he's so in their head because guys ran him after.
Not that.
But do you really feel like he has the same value on the road that he does at home?
I think he should have played more in game 3. The fourth line I thought had first half of that game, I thought they had the best offensive zone pressure on Florida. I mean, Barclay Goodrow's goal, they get the puck in deep, they get it back, they get it low to high. Goodrow gets the tip in the slot, Rempe screening Bobrovsky, and they score a goal. That's a huge goal. 25 seconds after Lafreniere's first goal. Like that's a positive impact on the game. And they didn't get a lot of ice time, but the ice time they had, they did their job. They get the puck in deep.
The other guys got a lot. Had a
Goodrow had a big shorthanded goal.
Like Goudreau, I think in the playoffs, like having him on the ice for 12 minutes, 13 minutes is a positive for your team. Like this is why you have Goudreau. It's not for the regular season. He's got 2 Stanley Cups. He knows what it takes in these moments. And he's been phenomenal. His hit on the kill, blocking shots. I mean, he does all the little things that you need guys to commit to on your fourth line. So, I just thought, again, I thought Rempe made such a massive impact in his 10 minutes of ice in that game in New York. Like, I mean, the building, everything. And then again, 4 minutes, like it's impossible for a player to impact a hockey game in 4 minutes. It's impossible.
Yeah. But do you also notice I don't know how to necessarily word this, but the Florida Panthers and what they are and what they do, like Sam Bennett hasn't been running around as much. I feel like Tkachuk hasn't really been doing as much of his shit. Do you think there's any part of that has to do with Rempe being out there? You see them after the overtime goal, like Tkachuk takes a whack at Rempe.
Yeah, listen, I didn't read quite as much into that as I think.
I didn't even notice it. BR Open Ice caught it and posted it themselves. I didn't even.
But they said that it was your video or something.
It was my video, but I didn't even pick up on that.
But I didn't listen. I think that's this like playoff shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. I didn't think that was a part of it. But look, of course it makes some bit of difference, but I also think one of the big things that Paul Maurice has stressed to his team is we can't let this power play get going. So we got to stay away from the after the scrum type of shit. And here's the other thing. I don't necessarily think I don't think that's really the Rangers game either. Like the Rangers are more like business-like. We just go about our business. We stay out of the shit. Ryan Lindgren puts his face in front of pucks and they just continue to get set in there. It's just a more business-like approach where, I think Florida is kind of similar in that regard. Now, let me ask you about the Jacob Trouba play, because I don't remember. I saw your tweets about it. And I think your original tweet.
I thought it should have been a major. I mean, go.
Let's have the video from ESPN come up. You were at the game, so you go. You start. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when I am at the game, I react before I really get to see replays. So I said initially, I thought this should have been a major. I mean, from that angle specifically, this angle is different. This angle looks like Trouba gets him kind of in the back. The initial angle that they showed at the game,
really get him.
I know, but the initial angle, it looks like he gets an elbow right to the jaw. Right. And it's that chicken wing thing. It's not like he goes like this, right? It's a different motion that you're making. He's sticking his arm out to try to get a piece of him. I don't think it's like a vicious elbow, but when you first see it from up top in the press box, it looks like he gets him with a fucking elbow in the face. And, in this world of hockey, anytime you see that, it's typically a 5 and the player's thrown out of the game. So my initial reaction was, yep, that should be a 5. And Rodriguez was down for a while. And the fact that he basically played dead for a bit and came back and played goes to show you that he shouldn't be fucking, doing that, obviously. But
do you still believe it should have been?
No, of course not. Of course not. After seeing replays, it's easier to tell. But we haven't even talked since game 2. I thought the Kulikov hit on Wenberg was like 10 times. I mean, you're going to call me biased, but 10 times worse than what Trouba did to Rodriguez. Also, I don't know if Vic can find this, but I had a clip last night. I caught it.
That was a thumping hit. That
Yeah,
Kulikov hit. I mean,
but there was a hit.
And everybody, but here's the thing of that hit. Everybody wants to show the clip from the puck already being gone. And everybody wants to watch it in slow motion where it seems like he got rid of the puck and then Kulikov hit him 11 seconds later because it's slow motion. It's not how it works. It's similar to the hit, the Bruins, the Charlie McAvoy hit in the last round where everyone was like, blatant interference, Colby. You have no idea what you're talking about. And I said, this is the cleanest, heaviest, most textbook hit you could have in hockey because, again, the puck, when you watch it in slow motion, sure, it looks like the puck's been gone forever, but it hadn't been. And I had no problem with any of these hits. Yeah. I thought the Kulikov hit was the right call. I thought the Trouba hit didn't, to me, no way that should be a major. No way that should be a major.
Colby, look at this. This is the irony of that hit, too. So that hit was on Evan Rodriguez. In the first period, Rodriguez goes to throw the same exact type of hit on Alex Wenberg, the same exact little chicken wing motion, which I didn't see this until last night. And I just find that hilarious that it was Trouba who did it to Rodriguez when Rodriguez, apparently that clip was in the first period, tried to do the same exact thing to Alex Wenberg.
And Jeremiah, I thought that the hit that Oshie had on Panarin was fine. Like, it's playoffs.
Yeah, I agree.
I like, you have to have more of a tolerance for this stuff in the playoffs. You just do. I mean, it's what makes playoffs awesome is these big hits, and you never want guys to be hurt, but this is just how things continue to go. And even Gretzky said it on the panel last night when talking about Trouba, like, some of these that look like they're these big elbows, sometimes you're just trying, when a guy's beating you, you're trying to get him with like a little forearm shiver. You're just trying to get a piece of them, right? Like even Rodriguez there, that one you just showed.
Yeah.
Like his intention is not, oh, let me elbow a guy in the head. You're just trying to get a little piece of him. A lot of times you hit guys right on the arm right here just to try to slow a little bit. If you can slow him down just the smallest amount, and then a bat. So again, you watch these in slow motion, you look at them frame by frame, you say, this guy's trying to hurt that guy, the intent is blah, blah, blah. And it's not reality. None of it is based in reality. Slow-mo in hockey is a slice of the pie. It's not the whole pie. It's not the majority of the pie. It's a narrative telling way to look at things if you want it to fit what your hometown narrative is already telling you. But I also saw a lot of Ranger fans were pretty reasonable about not Ranger fans. A lot of Panther fans were pretty reasonable about that Trouba play. Because ones that were popping up on my popular page, because there was no head contact.
Yeah.
There really was no head contact.
You know what's wild too? Because we were all asking questions on what would happen if that were a 5-minute major. It would have been 7 minutes of 5-on-4. I would have thought it would have been 2-minute 5-on-3 and then into the last 3 minutes of the 5-minute major.
Because he gets the 2 penalties.
But it would have been a 7. Have you ever seen 7 minutes of 5-on-4? That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was wild. But one more thing I have to ask, because
the 2 wouldn't have started until the 5 ended. I assume the 5 would have gone first.
Yeah, I guess.
Because it trumps, and then they could score as many times as they want, and then once it gets to the 2, then it just becomes a regular minor.
Yeah. I have to ask you one more thing, and I'm sorry for the Panthers fans listening that we haven't talked specifically about Florida. It seemed like Florida played their best possible.
I mean, that third period was an all-out assault on the New York Rangers. I mean, the Forsling goal, what a shot that was. Oh, my God. The Barkov one is a little more of a fluky play. He kind of just gets body positioning on Vinny.
Even Reinhardt's goals were fluky, too, though.
He's a bigger guy, so he's able to kind of box out Vinny Trocheck a little bit, and that's where being 6'3" or 4" that Sasha Barkov is comes into play against a smaller player like Vinny Trocheck. But I still have no worries for the Florida Panthers, and I said that on Frank's show yesterday. Like, their process Their backs against the wall. They're facing some adversity for the first time, I would say, like real adversity in the playoffs. But I still think, they're a team that can win games. They can reel off games.
Yeah.
I don't think they're lacking confidence. I assume they'll make some lineup tweaks after losing 2 in a row. I would think maybe Okposo draws back in. I don't know.
Paul Maurice also like shifted the lines during the game and stuff. He had Verhaeghe up on that first line with Barkov and Reinhart, I believe, was the 3.
Yeah, Reinhart getting those 2 goals should work for a Ranger fan because he's been a little bit cold. And on the power plays, at like 1 power play goal in the playoffs, then he gets 2. That's not something you want to see if you're a Ranger fan. Reinhart kind of getting confidence and heating up a little bit. I mean, look, we already talked about how Laff is a streaky scorer. I think a lot of these guys get streaky. I think, it's how big are the valleys? The peaks are great, but how far down do you go on the valleys when you're one of those streaky scorers?
Yeah. The last thing I have to ask you about this game, and I know we're going to get into our Betway preview for tonight as well, with this game being the only game on tonight, but got a text, and I don't always like read out texts that I get about, this show and whatnot, but this is a loyal listener, good friend of mine, Steve Gross. I talk to him at every single Ranger game. He always comes up to the press box and we basically chat about the game in between periods as it's happening. He wants to ask you a specific question, so I wanted to read it to you as a defenseman. Can you ask Colby his take on why K'Andre Miller gets beat to the outside consistently? Is it his skating or him relying on his stick length?
Well, I mean, look, not every guy, has like a clean pivot every single time, obviously. So I think it has to do with just the ability to move laterally and the ability to pivot. I mean, I would have to look at some of the clips. Is he crossing his feet? I mean, when when you watch really good skating defensemen, watch Miro Heiskanen, watch Roman Josi, even watch Hedman, McDonough, any of these guys that are good defenders, you watch when they pivot, they don't cross their feet. Human nature is you lean to your inside edge and then you cross to your outside and then you turn your body and pivot, right? But the really good guys, they use a heel push or like a V pivot where their feet are like this and their skate goes out and then you turn your body, right? And, that split nanometer of a second, and I just obviously made up that, that word, but I'm trying to demonstrate how slim the margin is against these forwards is a huge difference maker. Is if you cross your feet when you pivot, advantage to the forward. And it's hard not to, because our whole lives growing up, we were all taught crossovers. And then things started to change about, I'd say 10 to 12 years ago, where they no longer want you to cross your feet when you pivot, when you turn for pucks, whatever it may be. They want you to use a heel or a V type of push, and just kind of turn your hips and your shoulders. And then, you go stick on pucks. So I'd have to watch him closer. But I would look no further than his feet. And if he is doing that, if he is crossing his feet, when you're looking at it. So, I mean, listen, there's a number of high end defensemen in the NHL that, again, they're good skaters or they're really good defenders and they're efficient. They might not be the guys who look like they're gliding, like Cale Makar, just Makar or Hughes or even the other Hughes brother in New Jersey. When those guys skate, they almost look like they're floating.
I'd say Eichel is like the best. I'd say even though he's a forward.
Who?
I'd say Jack Eichel, even though he's a forward.
I'm just talking about defense.
Yeah, I know. And sorry if there's background noise.
Either smooth skaters or really efficient skaters. There's kind of both. But you just watch how these guys pivot their feet, and you watch how these guys, defend, right? And their body position and how efficient they are. So I don't know if that's something K'Andre is doing. I've never, I can't. It's not striking a nerve of a memory, but I do think he's a big guy and he's not overly physical. Like, that's not his game. He's not some punishing big defenseman. He's solid. So, again, does he probably rely on his stick a little bit? Yeah, but also, like, he's a big man. Like he carries a big frame. It's a lot of weight. He's not naturally going to move as quick as an undersized forward or a guy skating, up on their edges as they're trying to kind of go around you wide. So I happen to like the way Keandre Miller plays. I think he's not some dynamo offensive defenseman, but I think he's a, prototypical 200-foot two-way guy who brings you offense, is good defensively, moves the puck really well. Like he's kind of this I can do anything and everything type of defenseman in the modern game, and not like an offensive defenseman, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, a little more just mobile, kind of like a midfielder of some sort, maybe, if you can make a crossover with another sport. But Colby, let's get into Betway for tonight.
Yeah. I think we're going to stay with your guy actually here for Betway, because we talked about the fact that, he is a streaky scorer, and Betway's still offering a great promotion with us, a free $200 reimbursement on your first bet. You can take advantage of that by scanning the QR code on your screen, create a new account. That'll dial up your account to have this promotion from Betway, only available outside of Ontario. Please play responsibly as always. I had a pretty nice live bet last night on the Dallas Stars, made a couple of bucks when they were down 0-2. Just felt like they're a team that's never been out of it. Just like when they were down 0-2, Jonny Boy was panicking against the Vegas Golden Knights. And I said, just stay with the Dallas Stars plan. But hey, plus 225 for Lafreniere to score. If we've seen anything from him over the last 3 or 4 months, and you go look at his splits, go to his stat pages, go to his splits, he scores in bunches. He has these 2 or 3 game, clusters where he reels off 5 and 6 points before he then usually kind of gets quiet for 5 or 6 games. And so right now, I would ride it. If you want a good looking, juicy, anytime goal scorer, plus 225 with Lafreniere coming off of a massive 2-goal game. He's probably beaming with confidence right now, as he should. I think he'll get another goal tonight for the New York Rangers. What do you think? I mean, how do you feel about that? That is your golden goose. And this was not your bet. You didn't pick this.
No,
I picked this. So I just want to make that clear.
Can I be honest and say that I have like absolutely no feel on this game tonight? After what we saw in game 3, like this could either be a game where the Rangers come out and, maybe bring it to Florida a little bit, or it could just be a total domination for the Florida Panthers with their backs against the wall for the first time in these playoffs. Because if you're Florida right now, like, granted, while it's not a must win, you don't want to go back to New York down 3-1, and if there's one team that could probably erase that deficit, it is the Panthers, because they've been so good on the road all playoffs. But, I got to think that Florida comes out and brings everything to the Rangers tonight, but every time we've seen that happen, the Rangers somehow find their way out of it. It's the craziest thing. I know you talked in the beginning about Dallas having this like no panic when they're down, but with Shesterkin in net, the Rangers kind of had that too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would say that there's 3 teams left that I still think are all coin flips to win the Stanley Cup. I just do.
Yeah,
I think the Rangers, the Florida Panthers, and the Dallas Stars, I think, are complete coin flips to win the Stanley Cup. I think it's interesting how now the odds on the team with the worst odds is now the Florida Panthers. At least they were going into last night. I bet you Edmonton has dropped below them after losing that game the way that they did. But I think any of those 3 teams, if I'm the New York Rangers, I'm not comfortable right now. If I'm the Florida Panthers, I'm not comfortable right now. I think the only team that should feel a little bit of comfort in their series right now is the Dallas Stars. Mm-hmm. And I know the Rangers are up, but look, they're playing against a team that's every bit as good as they are.
Yep.
And a team that has this well-oiled machine mentality. And look, tonight's a big game. I mean, there's no, if the Rangers find a way to win again in Florida and you're looking at 3-1, I mean, you'd be crazy to pick against the Rangers. So we're at, the Stars are plus 150, the Rangers plus 250, plus 3. Stars.
Right.
And then you've got the Oilers at plus 400, Florida at plus 375. Like that's pretty juicy for the Florida Panthers, who again, like we've said it at times, they've looked like the best team in hockey, and right now, I think Igor is just, again, he's been too much. He's out battled. I mean, 4 goals should win you a playoff game in my estimation, but the saves that Shesterkin came up with in that third period, that's every bit the difference.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you feel as a Ranger fan? Like, do you feel, and be honest, okay? Are you so confident right now, up 2-1? Like, are you like or are you still feeling a little bit of discomfort?
Oh, of course there's discomfort, but you should have been in the building after the second period. Rangers are up 4-2 going into the third. I took the elevator with some Panthers fans, and they were like, "Oh man, Tuesday's going to be rough. Like, we can't go down 3-1." Like, Panthers fans were ready to give up, and Ranger fans, the ones I was talking to at least, were like, "We didn't win shit yet." Like, you know what I mean? Like,
you could almost feel, I mean, that you could feel that coming. I mean, when they got that third goal, you're like, "Oh shit!" Like, this is,
dude. Ranger fans know. Like, there's like people say no quit in New York. Like, that's the phrase, that the motto the Rangers use. There is no comfort in New York ever. Like, we had a 3-0 lead against Carolina, and Ranger fans thought for sure we were seeing a game 7.
How perfect of a shot was that Gustav Forsling? I mean, that was that's the only place you could beat him. Like, if that isn't a perfect shot, it doesn't go in.
Can I say one thing about Gustav Forsling? I haven't watched him so closely all year. I've watched him now 3 games very closely, and we have another loyal listener to this show, Gary Tucker, who is a diehard Panthers fan who texts me every fucking game about Gustav Forsling.
He's the best defenseman in the playoffs.
He is, but not only that. Like, that guy never looks tired, is not phased by anything, has a absolute missile of a shot. Like, not even on that wrist shot that he scored. Like, he had a couple other one-timers that were bullets. And he is every single definition of the word brick shithouse. Like, that guy is strong. He's big. He's fast. He moves the puck well. I mean, look at this shot. It's perfectly placed in stride. You know how hard it is to shoot in stride, right? Like, Shesterkin,
Heedle didn't look. That was one play where, that's kind of a little bit of a broken play there, but Heedle's got to be more disciplined there. He gets caught, trying to jump that route when he really needs to be a little more, a little more patient defensively, because that's his guy as that winger to the inside. That's
so fast. No clean
I understand that. I'm just saying I was texting with Craig about that. As that winger, like, you can't be so horny to jump in there, because the inside guy, whoever lines up on the inside, there's both wingers, right? The inside guy's job is to go try to get in there and then go to the wall defenseman, right? So that's your kind of path. You go through the puck battle out to the far defenseman, and then the inside guy shades that area to make sure Forsling doesn't have that opportunity. So that is a little bit of, I did praise the hockey IQ defensively and the habits of Philip Heedle. And I stand by that, because I really think his game is complete as far as, I just mean as he's turned into a complete hockey player, but that's blown coverage right there. And you got to call it out when you see it, as a winger. That is 100% his responsibility there, not to get overzealous into that initial puck battle and kind of shade off, to make sure you kind of have your peripheral sight set on Forsling, so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I know we're going a little bit long here, but there's one other thing I just wanted to mention. The Florida Panthers, I think they had won 12 straight overtime games, prior to game 2. A team that was not phased come overtime. The Rangers now, they've won back-to-back games in overtime, and they're 4-0 in overtime in these playoffs. It's like, they can get dominated, but the fact that they have these, like, big moments
doesn't matter how you win in the playoffs.
It's crazy, right? Like, it is. It's nuts.
It doesn't matter how you win in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I watched our team get outplayed by by the Vancouver Canucks and win hockey games in a Stanley Cup final, because Tim Thomas just said, it's not going in tonight. It's just, even game 1, we lose the game 1-0 in Vancouver. We had no business even being in that hockey game. We lose it early in overtime, I believe it was, because Tim Thomas was just that good. And look, Lundqvist said it, and I don't think it's him being a Rangers homer, because look, he knows the goalie position. He has been fascinating on that TNT panel, talking about the goaltending position this year. I mean, having him on more regularly, like it's the one position that I think most hockey people just don't know if they didn't play it.
Yeah.
And, he said it, of the teams left, like if you're ranking your goaltenders, if you're going to fantasy draft, right, of the teams left of goaltenders, and I know Skinner would be everybody's fourth pick, right? But I think Shesterkin would be everybody's first pick. I think those are the only two no-brainers. Is Shesterkin is the best one left, and Skinner is number 4. And then I think Bob and Ottinger, it's you'd see a little more discrepancy. Put it in the chat, people. Would love to hear what you guys think about that. Rank your goaltenders of the 4 goalies left, and I'm interested to see if I'm on the right basis here with all of you saying that Igor would be 1 and Skinner would be 4, and then I think it's more of a coin flip with the other 2.
I do think to that, though, again, we'll exclude Skinner and the Oilers, but I think each fan base would pick their guy. Like, I think Florida would believe in Bob. I think Dallas would believe in Ottinger, and obviously the Rangers aren't picking anyone besides.
But let's just say if you were to do it nationally, and it's not just those 4, like that's why I'm saying we obviously have a very diverse group of fans in our chat. Listen, so there you go. You've already got someone who threw Bob in there, number 1. I think if you're being bipartisan, we'll throw that word in there, political word of the day. If you're being, unbiased, Igor Shesterkin is the best goaltender left in the playoffs. And here's the other thing I want to say about that is that what is with all the bullshit? And I should have brought this up with Frank, because him and I argue about this on his show. All the people that say you don't need to invest in a number 1 goaltender, look in the playoffs right now. The 3 teams that could still win a Stanley Cup, in my opinion, that are the coin flips to win the cup, they've all invested in goaltending. They all have a true number 1 goalie that's either gotten paid or getting paid. And then the team that doesn't have a true number 1 is the one team we're looking at and we're going, we don't really know what we're going to get out of them on a night-to-night basis. People were calling for Picard to come in over the last 2 games. I don't think it would have been the right decision, because I don't think Skinner is why they lost. But still, I think that I think just Shesterkin is the guy right now in the playoffs. And look, you know how I am with BU guys. Jake Ottinger's a BU guy, but you got to call it like you see it.
Yeah, I'm laughing because Ben Benya, who is one of my favorite commenters in our chat, just said Shesterkin, Bob, Otter, Quick. He'd put Quick over Skinner. which I think, that's a fair comment.
But look, to Skinner's, to be fair, the last 2 out, I know that 4th goal was not a good goal.
Bad.
But you go back to the last game Edmonton won, and I know they outshot Edmonton, and you watch the grade A chances that Dallas had in game 2. Dallas had, of their first 12 shots, 9 of them, I went back and I actually counted. These are not advanced stats numbers. I went back and watched the chances and the shots. 9 of the first 12 shots for Dallas, which they didn't get until the 15-minute mark of the second period, were grade A's, like high-end grade A's. Like I would rank them high-end A chances. We're not talking B chances. Like we're talking high-end A chances. And Skinner stopped them all after letting in that shitty first goal that he did in that game. Like, I honestly think that could have been one of those games where Dallas was up 3-1 with 12 shots on goal, right? And they could have been getting outshot 24-12 and could have been up 3-1. So I thought Skinner got them the win in game 2. Like, I thought he deserved a lot of credit for that win.
Game 1, you're saying?
No, I'm saying game 2, the game that Edmonton won game 2.
No, they won game 1.
I thought they won game 2.
No, Dallas won game 2.
Dallas just won 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Okay, so game 1. Sorry, I'm confusing my games because we haven't had a show since Thursday?
I know, it feels like there's been so much shit happening.
And we didn't do Monday. That's right. We didn't do Monday, so there was a longer That's right. There was a longer layoff. But I felt like he stole a lot of that game is my point in saying that. So
great show today. I think we're gonna leave it at that. Long show. We'll be back at it tomorrow at 9 a.m. And we have Oilers Nation, Tyler Yaremchuk joining us for tomorrow's show. We'll talk a little more preview of that game, and then we'll get into what happens tonight between the Rangers and Panthers. Just Colby, give me your final score tonight and prediction before we hop off.
I think the Panthers even it up tonight. I have a hard time. I have a hard time seeing it otherwise. But I think it's going to be low scoring, maybe 3-1, but with an empty netter. I think the game's going to get tight tonight. I think it got loose in the last game, couple breakaways on either side. I think things will tighten up and get physical. How good was that game? Can we just, unreal. That was one of the best games of the playoffs. Yeah. You had highlight reel goals.
And that's not Colby Cohen hockey. Colby Cohen likes the 1-1.
No, but the goalies were great though.
Yeah.
That wasn't a horse race. That was great goaltending. That was big, the big hits. It just had everything. Overtime. Physicality. That to me was one of my favorite games of the playoffs that we've seen, that overtime game in that New York series. So yeah, I think low scoring, 3-1 empty net tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Florida wins it too. I see them bouncing back in a really strong way. I mean, Paul Maurice is one of the better coaches out there too, and he's been pretty unbelievable so far. And the motor on the Panthers, I mean, this team, their conditioning, it just seems like it's unbelievable as well. And that's something that's not talked about either. These guys are not tired.
A lot of the chat's calling for an Igor shutout tonight. It wouldn't shock me. Listen,
well, don't jinx it.
It wouldn't shock me. The guy looks like he's gone to another level. And I think if you find the tapes, you'll see it in the tapes. We said Igor is the guy that can be the one difference maker in this series that the other team doesn't have. As good as Bob is, they don't have it. Igor's better. He's just better.
Yeah. All right. Great show today. Thanks to everyone in the chat. You guys were awesome. Big thank you to Vic. Thank you to Frank Seravalli for joining us. Hope you have a great day. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll be back at it tomorrow at 9 a.m.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content.